As you go through life, you'll always come across people that just don't like you for whatever reason. Now, they might have valid reasons for them to not like you, and those valid reasons might be because it's something that that you have done to them, right? If you have wronged them in some any way, and maybe them disliking you is justified. There's also people that just don't like you, maybe because the way you look or the way you act, or maybe they're just jealous of you because there's something you do better than them. Whatever the case may be, just by appearance or just by impression, they'll dislike you. And maybe another reason why they dislike you is because they just dislike everybody. They just can't help but dislike everybody and just make it a habit of doing so. And so how do you deal with those people? Well, for me, of course, I've always had people that have disliked me uh, throughout my life, and a lot of it for good reason because maybe I did things that were very unlikable. So I think if it's for that reason, then you know I would understand, right? Or at least maybe I didn't when I was younger. But if I did something wrong to them, then I would understand why they dislike me, and I would if it came to that, I would try to be apologetic and apologize for something that I did wrong for them. I'd really try my best to own up to it and make amends and try to reconcile. So, if it's for that reason that a person would dislike me, I would just try to make amends and try to reconcile and own up to whatever mistake I've made, right? And hope that that they forgive me and we can move on and continue to have a good whatever relationship it is, but to be on good terms. So that's for one. But then there are other reasons why people dislike you for reasons that aren't really justified, that don't really make any sense. It's just because they just hate you for maybe because of their own insecurity, or maybe they got their own issues and they just have a tendency to dislike people for all the wrong reasons. And usually if that's the case, I really do try to be friendly with them, and I try my best to uh, really just to be nice and kind to them regardless if they dislike me. But at a certain point, I come to realize, like, if there's people that just really dislike being around you and just do a lot of negative things around you, then it's just best really to give them space and just have a distance, have a healthy boundary where you don't get caught up in the negativity, right? You let them be who they are, and if they dislike you, then they don't have to associate with you, right? So you create that distance. They could do their own thing, they could have their own space, and you could do yours. At least if you can, right? If there's an ideal scenario where you could just be able to have those boundaries and create space and just let them be, and you do your own thing, then I think that is very healthy, right? And then you could just limit your interactions with them. You don't have to force those interactions if they dislike you. Obviously, you can always address the issue to the person and say, hey, why is it that you dislike me? And you could try to hash it out and try to talk about it and maybe come to an understanding. And maybe through that clear communication, you can be able to amend any type of faults, or they could learn to just not dislike you. Maybe they'll learn to like you more because you're able to have a clear communication, and even they can realize like there was no good reason for them to dislike you. So it could come to that too. You could address the situation and try to resolve it, right? But there are cases where you can't, where sometimes communication is actually really hard. Sometimes there's a lot of miscommunication, and even if you do address it, it probably doesn't go the way that you want it to. It doesn't get resolved. And at that point, maybe you could address that. At the very least, you can learn to respect one another and have just boundaries with one another. You don't have to like one another, but you could still be able to respect each other and still work with them in whatever scenario it is. If it's a work environment, school environment, in some type of community group, you don't have to interact as much, but at the very least, you don't have to disrespect each other, right? You could have a general level of respect for one another and not make things awkward for the rest of the people around you, right? And, if you could go about it that way and still continue to do your thing and for them to do theirs, then I think it would be fine. And, for both parties, you don't have to get so negative about like the dislike for one another. So, and usually, that usually helps. Like if you do create that distance, then you don't have to interact with them. Like you don't get caught up in the negativity. You could stay present in whatever it is that you're doing. You don't have to focus your attention on a person that continually dislikes you, and just being in that presence or being around that person. You don't have to be around that all the time. And you could do things yourself to create those boundaries and create that distance, create a healthy distance, and leave them alone and let them be. And you could just go on with whatever it is that you need to do in your daily task. And I think if you create that boundary, it would be a lot easier to deal with and tolerate with people who dislike you, because you do have a choice, and you can create, I would say, scenarios or boundaries where you could just spend less time with them. Like you don't have to be around them as much. And but there are times where it's very difficult, and you do have, when it comes to that case where you have to be around them, then it'd probably be best to communicate what is going on, address it, and try to find some resolution. And I think in the most extreme cases, and this would really take a person who is truly loving and kind to be able to do this, but to be able to love on the people that dislike you, to still be around them, and to still show kindness and still be good to them even when they dislike you, that is taking it to the next level, right? Because it's one thing to leave them alone and then you could go your separate ways and each party could do their own activities, right? And have their own lives. But to still be involved in that relationship and to find a way to still love on them and still care for them and be kind, that's taking another level. That's another step that you're willing to take in order to make that relationship a lot better and eventually have that person, turn around and see your kindness and see how caring you really are. And maybe that would really change their mindset, they'll change their hearts to realize that there's no need to dislike this person who is so kind to me, right? How could you be so distasteful or so dislike someone so much to someone who has always been good to you, right? So that's just taking another level, and it takes a lot of heart to be able to do that, to be able to show that kindness to someone that really doesn't like you, right? So if you're willing to take that step, I mean, that's also possible too. And people could change their hearts because you're being just overly kind because you think that's just the right thing to do, right? And so, those are the things that you could do to really deal with people who dislike you. I mean, obviously you can't live your life being a people pleaser and always have every single person like you. I mean, people are going to dislike you one way or another, But I guess it's just a matter of, will you treat everybody the same? Like, how are you willing to treat people? Is the way you treat people and the way you show kindness very conditional based on what they do to you? Or do you keep that same level of love and care for others despite the conditions? So, can you really care for someone and be kind to someone unconditionally? Because, that would be the ultimate challenge, really, in dealing with people in general, especially those that don't like you, especially those who you may even call enemies, and who have wronged you. Can you go to the next level and even forgive them? So, that's definitely the challenge that is there for you. The highest step you could probably take is just to show love to everybody, regardless of who they are, regardless of if they even dislike you. And I just wonder if that's a challenge for me personally too. Is that something that I'm able to do to everybody, regardless of whether they like me or not? And is that something you're willing to do as well? So that's something to ask yourself, right? When it comes to dealing with people, especially people who dislike you.